When we build forms in ASP.NET Core MVC, there isn't any validation that is happening by default. And the problem with this is that when we build a form, we can do things like leaving a field blank or type letter and create errors that associate inside of our database when we implement different CRUD operations. We can easily add validation to our application by adding data annotations to our model classes. Data annotations allow us to describe the rules that we want applied to our model properties, and in ASP.NET MVC, it will take care of enforcing them and displaying the appropriate messages to our users. So we want to implement data annotations inside of a view model to associate the different properties and types to our different form element fields on our web page. In this lecture, we're going to go ahead and build a little view model that's going to be associated later to our entity data model, and we're going to map those properties for validation in later lectures. In this lecture, we're going to create the view model to associate the different data annotation properties for our validation. So let's go over here to View Models. Let's click Add, New Class. And what we want to do is name this Login View Model. Let's click Add. And inside of the login view model, I want to associate different properties for our data annotation. So in this case, I want to map a username and a password. When we actually implement our database associated with Entity Framework Core, we will map the login view model property to associate data validation inside of our view. We will not directly implement that data annotation on our model itself. So I want to come in here and I'm going to type a shortcut prop, tab, and that's going to create my first property here. And I want this to be a string type, and I want this property to be username. So right there, this is going to be my first property in my login view model. Then I'm going to come down here, type prop again, tab, and inside of this, I want this to be a string. And then I want to type this to be password. So once I have that, these are the two properties that I want to associate with my login view model. Now I want to come up here and make both of these fields required. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to type in brackets, required. And when I type required, I can hover over the item and it's saying that the directive or assembly reference is not here. So let's go in here and let's import the using namespace of system.componentModel.dataAnnotations. So now I have a required attribute associated with the username property. So when this is implemented in my UI, whatever error message that it has based on, do I want to say that it's a default error message, or if in this case I'm going to come in here and make my own error message, it's going to say that this property is required for the model validation to be correct. So let's come in here, let's type error message. And our error message is going to be simple. It's going to be username is required. So once we have username is required, what other property types can I associate on this? So I'm going to come down here. I want to make this a specific data type, and I'm going to say data type. And then inside of the parentheses, I can associate what type of data type I want for this. And in this case, look at all the different data types. I can have a credit card number, I can have a custom data type, email address, image URL, any type of data type that I want, that when this is actually rendered into our browser, you will see this data type on the input and form field. So let's make this a text field. So now we have a data type of text. We can also make this a specific string length, and in this case for the first item, I'm not going to do that. But now I want to come down to my password type here. I want to make this required. And here I want to put an error message like I did above, and I can say password is required, as I did before. Then I want to come down here, I want to put my data type like we did before. In this case, I want the data type to be a password. So now we have a data type of password. So now I want to come down here. I'm going to put a different property here. It's going to be string length. So this specifies the minimum and maximum length of characters that are allowed in this data field. So here I want to put string length. And I want to say right here, I'm going to maximize it to 150 characters. Then I want to say my error message must be between 5 and 150 characters. And then the last item I want to associate in here is the minimum length. And we're going to say minimum length equals 5. And as you can see right there, my error message matches the max length and the minimum length associated with the characters. So this is how you inform your user. If they type too little characters or too much characters, this can be associated as the error message when it goes back to the browser. So right here, you can see all of the different data annotation properties that is being imported inside of the system.componentModel.data annotations. You have a required field for your username, a required for your password. The data type for your username is text. The data type for your password property is password. And then you have an associated string length with the minimum and maximum characters associated with this login view model. There's some other items you want to consider when you implement this. If we go to our bower.json file, you'll notice that we have jQuery, jQuery validation, and jQuery validation unobtrusive. These are required to implement the data validation logic in the browser when we actually emit these different properties associated with our view models. So jQuery, jQuery validation, and jQuery validation unobtrusive, these libraries are necessary to implement this logic. So you got to make sure you have these dependencies associated in your bower.json. And then when we build our actual layout view, we will link those different client-side libraries from our library folder right here to associate in our layout view so that when we ever do model validation logic, it will be implemented correctly. So make sure you have jQuery, jQuery validation, and jQuery validation unobtrusive. So this is how we implement data annotations in ASP.NET Core MVC. I want to thank you for joining me in this lecture, and in the next lecture, we'll delve into dependency injection in ASP.NET Core.